What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and some more Birthright domain reviews here. We're working our way through the Eastern Marches. There's not too much left, so today we're going to take a look at the Sielwode, which is an example of one of the elven realms. And really, as far as the classic Anawir setting, there's three, two of which you get to play as, if you want to, Sielwode and Tuarkievel, and then the other one being Rove, which is, of course, one of the major bad guy NPCs and bad guy domains. Or antagonist domains that you have to deal with if you're in that southwestern part of Anawir. So the Sielwode is interesting. So it's neutral, and as it says, cares only for nature and does not, as a rule, become involved in the politics of humans. But as we will see in the description and some additional information, their outside circumstances are kind of dictating a little bit of a change in that attitude. Because, again, given the way that the elves are in the setting, where they really are overall antagonistic towards humans, the classical issue for the elves, of course, and even dwarves, right? There's so few in number that they can't possibly necessarily continue on as they have and stand on their own without at least some sort of tenuous alliance, or at least not being outright in conflict with some of their human neighbors, just because they have to deal with all the other non-human factions or monsters and whatever else that are also causing issues for them, and again, outright hostile towards them as well. So it's one of those where ideally they'd love to be neutral, but again, circumstances might force them into having to change their outlook a little bit. And this is, again, another one of those shorter description ones. I kind of had wished that they would have provided more sort of the double spread domain descriptions here in the Eastern Marches. We don't really get much of that except for Baruch Ajik. That being said, and we'll eventually cover these two, Sielwode is one of those that did get one of these sort of player's guide to supplements, which really will greatly expand your knowledge of that domain. And then, so we can forgive some of the lack of detail here, because we're going to get a whole lot of it more in that. So definitely one worth picking up if you haven't. It was one of the criticisms of all the Birthright releases and catalog of, again, just products for it, that there were just so many of those player's guide to things. But really, again, given the brief descriptions here, sure, you can, as a DM and players and all that, fill in a lot of things and do your own thing. But I always thought that those were really cool. They were so cheap back in the day too. Of course, now trying to find them online for reasonable prices can be difficult. People are just insane with some of these older D&D products now. But those were always really cool to me. You got not only like a full color detailed drawing of what the domain looks like, but then again, just all this sort of extra detail that really couldn't possibly be put into like a core book here, just because if we had a 30-page description for every domain, and not just for Anawir, right, this would be like a encyclopedia-sized tome covering the details of each domain. So in that sense, the way they did it made makes sense as far as making that a separate product. And again, back then they were relatively cheap. I think they were all under like $10. And for what you got for that price, there's really should be no complaining about those things. Were they all fantastic down to the last detail? Just depends. So again, and it's not something that you need to pick up for every domain that they made one for, but it is just more great information. And frankly, even if you weren't, even just for the DM, just a great resource to have. So in that sense, I can only say essentially positive things about those. But anyway, let's jump into the domain here. We'll cover these players' guide twos at some point, again, separately. So neutral, as we said, several provinces here, again, mostly sparsely settled. Again, given just how few elves there are. That being said, ECR has leveled up to 4 here. Lots of magical potential still prevalent. Also, everything's like a 5 or 6 here on the magic side. Really, as far as internal politics and things, relatively simple. All the law is held here by Iselier and sources as well. So makes that nice and simple. No temples because, well, the elves in the setting don't have gods. And guild activity, well, there's not so much trading with the outside world, right? So makes that nice and simple. So the Emerald Queen is Salier, and again, in this setting, wizards, true wizards are rarer than some of the other lower level, what they call like illusionists and things like that. And so for us here to have a level 13 wizard in the setting is incredibly potent. Very solid bloodline as well, and she's listed as neutral. So she watches over the fairy court of the Sielwode. Though she feels neutral towards humans and their kingdoms, she knows she must punish human encroachment harshly, lest men come to believe they can trespass on elf lands at will. So she has held the throne for more than 100 years, and in that time has watched the human lands slowly coalesce from openly warring kingdoms into roughly their current shape. She knows that despite the dangers hidden within her lands, the humans will eventually turn their gazes toward the Sielwode. The elves won't be able to resist them for long. Again, just not enough numbers. This sad queen feels the fate of her people heaving upon her shoulders, or heavily upon her shoulders. She can act savage at times, unwilling to accept humans' immense capacity for destruction. At these moments, she's likely to order the razing of every human settlement within 100 miles. Seems a bit extreme, but hey. However, she remains struck profoundly by any sort of beauty, whether human or elven, natural or created. Thus, she has borne several half-elf children from liaisons with beautiful human men. So, could be something funny to roleplay too. So, if you were humans and were adventuring somehow in and around the realm, if you got caught up in that situation where she takes a fancy to maybe one of the party members, so that could be interesting, awkward, but also potentially dangerous too. Should you not, or should you reject her, right? So anyway, lieutenants in the Sielwode, Corwin Reese Diordan can get anything done. This tall, dark-skinned, and bright-eyed elf awaits only the command of his queen before acting. If anyone can convince her of a course of action, he can. He's a 7th level ranger, has several human friends, and likely his counsel keeps the queen quiet during some of her anti-human moods. So, again, could be a valuable resource and sort of ally to have, or at least a connection in that realm, should you be adventuring in there, and he might be a source of like a quest giver or task giver, and might, again, get you some, push on some sort of relatively friendly terms with the elves there. So, the 9 provinces of the Sielwode remain unexplored by humans, those with the temerity to try and discover that the land itself turns against them. The capital of the fairy court is, and we're going to butcher this, Sielwode, or the heart of the shield. At its center lies the Crystal Palace, an edifice brought up from the core of the earth by the lore of past rulers. In this place of grandeur, a single candle held just right can illuminate the entire building, so that is pretty cool. And again, when we get around to looking at the player's guide, we'll get much more in-depth detail on this stuff. Other important NPCs here, an emissary from Rove, Manslayer, currently resides there, so dun dun dun. So, and we know that Rove is going to be vehemently anti-human. Adara, Quamhircha, and again, anybody who's a little bit more familiar with like Gaelic and things like that, or has a better way of pronouncing that, let us know. Because again, some of these names are just don't exactly roll off the tongue. Seeks the Emerald Queen as an ally and perhaps a wife for her master. So now, if that were ever to happen, again, obviously Sielwode's going to be openly and outright anti-human, and that will cause some issues for the neighboring domains. So again, if you were playing the game as a domain ruler and you're not running the Sielwode, again, if something like that were to happen, that's something you would be interested in not having happen as far as any actual alliance with Rove. She seems as much of a fanatic about humans as Rove, but he may not have corrupted her entirely. So again, there could be some interesting adventure and plot hooks there. Now, the description of the realm itself is no place for humans. As in Tuarhivel, the woods feel dark and brooding, but the aura of menace here is palpable. So again, something cool to play up as the DM for the characters. Where Tuarhivel holds little specific malice for humans, the nature of the Sielwode repels them. Flitting fairy and slow-moving tree ant alike disdain contact with humans and want only to drive them from the forest or lure them into danger. The land, while not evil, has awakened and learned hatred for mankind. So, again, that should be played up in any kind of adventuring that happens around here. Bogs lie in clearings across the perimeter of the land, shielded by trees until a traveler is newly upon them. The unwary might find themselves hip-deep in quicksand before they know it. Thorn hedges rise up between trees, blocking those who won't know the way from entering the wood. Flowers dangle from the trees, spewing a narcotic into the faces of those who pass too close. Some victims never wake from this slumber. So just from that paragraph there, this should be a very dangerous place should you find yourself should the players find themselves adventuring in and around there. So definitely something to play up again as the DM, and should be, again, even on the domain level. If for some reason you got it in your head that you were going to invade or attack the Sielwode, that should certainly be a cause for concern, and really should prevent a major obstacle for any player and their armies attempting to do so. But not everything in the Sielwode holds danger. Some glens possess such beauty as to make a human die from the mere sight. So again, craziness here. So oak groves cluster around crystal clear pools, while roses bloom on vines that wrap tree trunks. So again, there's lots of interesting and very descriptive, evocative things here. So again, this should be something that the DM needs to spend a little bit of time on. If there's going to be adventuring in the domain here, certainly needs to be played up and sort of incorporated properly. So especially if humans will be, or really anything that anyone that isn't an elf finds themselves adventuring in here, this should really be played up. Now, again, we're not really given any other description here as far as any armed forces or other things like that. Again, we'll get a little bit more into detail of that when we see the player's guide. But if you didn't have access to it, something that, again, and you're running this domain, something that, again, that can be worked out with the player. So certainly shouldn't be as much of a standing force as Tuarhiavel, because they need that considering their proximity to the Gorgon. But certainly should be capable of having at least a mix of different elven units here in case of war. So something, again, for the DMs to figure out. But overall, an interesting realm, and also given its location here. So we're going to flip back to the map here of the Eastern Marches just to kind of show you what we're talking about here. So if we can get the glare off here. So again, lots of different borders here. So we're bordering on the dwarves. Shouldn't really be any major issue there. Not that they're always on the friendliest terms either, but again, it's not as quite the same as that hate for the humans. Bit of a border on Cornace, larger on Elenia, a little bit separated from Morid. But the big issue for the Sielwode, again, is so you have some human realms that you border. The dwarves, again, not really should be a threat. They're preoccupied with dealing with the Orogs, but you do have significant borders with domains that are allied with the Gorgon, and that might force a little bit of a change, or like a little bit of pragmatism in politics here, because even though the elves really hate the humans, they can, more or less everyone can agree that the Gorgon is no one's friend, right? So you got Markazor, you got Morkalad around there, and then Kierkegaard as well. So that's a significant part of the border of the domain there. And then you got the capital kind of located in the middle there. But that is a snapshot of the Sielwode. So again, lots of different borders. And we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I believe 6 total domains that border it. So just something to keep in mind there, but overall an interesting realm, and one of the few elven ones in the classic Anawir setting. So let us know what you think in the comments, guys. If you've played in and around the Sielwode, whether adventuring or domain-wise, or if you've run the domain, what have you done with it in your campaign? So hit us up in the comments, guys. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. We got one more coming here for the Eastern Marches as far as political domains, and that's going to be Baruka Zeke. We're saving that one for the last, so the Dwarven realm here, and then we'll get on to the smaller domains, the non-political ones. So take care, guys. We'll see you in the next one.